We are witnessing the beginning of the death of the dollar's reign as the global reserve currency, or at least that's a very real possibility given everything that is happening right now as a result of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and how the United States and Europe are deciding to deal with it, and especially, this is key, how China responds as well. We are seeing the entire financial system globally start to tilt heavily in favor of incentivizing finding a way around using SWIFT and using dollars. It will not happen overnight, and it will not even happen in a matter of months. But when history looks back on the end of the dollar's reign as the global reserve currency, it is very possible that it looks back at this moment as the key, as the beginning of the end.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. My name is AJ. I'm here to talk about Russia again and why American dollar is screwed. Sorry for the language, but I can't think of a better word to use at this moment in time. As you can see from this article, China to work with Asian neighbors to grow the use of local currencies over US dollar in trade and investments. Bilateral currency swaps among ASeAN regional grouping, China, Japan, South Korea have reached 380 billion. So when I say the American dollar is screwed, I actually mean it. Because you can see from the first clip I've shown you today, history will prove that this is the moment that the death of the dollar has started. You can see from this article, ASeAN, which is the biggest trading bloc in the whole world, bigger than Europe, bigger than America, the biggest trading bloc in the whole world, is now looking to diversify away from the US dollar and use local currency instead. Before I go any further, guys, we really need your help. We could do a big favor with your support. I really appreciate if some of you guys can join my Patreon or can buy coffees, or you can either help by supporting the channel by subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. Do all of that, because channels like myself are very rare. As you can know, we're very few and far between, very much a minority. The Westerners do not like free speech, do not like channels like RT, which has been completely banned. So there's only a few channels like myself who are speaking out the truth, and we need your help to grow and to spread our message to more and more people. And when America has used the dollar so many times as a weapon of sanction, countries have had enough. And now you see ASEAN countries, which is the largest trading group in the whole world, is going to start using local currencies instead of using the dollar. So you have Russia using ruble or Chinese yuan, China using Chinese yuan with all of its neighbors. China is the biggest trading partner in most countries around the world. It's got the BRI, and it will start trading in yuan. And all of these other countries in ASEAN will start trading in their local currencies. Europe obviously trades in euros. Africa, you have a lot of Chinese investments in Africa. So a lot of African countries will start using the local currencies as well as yuan. And you have the Middle East, and the Middle East has had enough of the US dollar. You have countries like Iran already using its local currency and China's yuan and Russian rubles as well. And you see Dubai, places like Dubai, who is becoming more China friendly, and is trading its oil and gas with China with its local currencies as well. And as you know, Middle East has had enough. It has had enough of US dollars, has had enough of US bombing the country into smithereens, has had enough of US invading and killing Muslims in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Yemen, as well as in Palestine. You might be saying to yourself, hang on a second, the US has got nothing to do with Palestine or Yemen. Well, you would be wrong. The US has been supporting Israel for years and years, giving them money, giving them weapons to kill Palestinians, to steal their land, and it's genocide. Palestinians have got less and less land now than they had in the 1960s, and there's less and less Palestinians being born. So it is a gradual genocide, and Amnesty International has called it apartheid, and people have had enough of America's double standards. They claim human rights, yet turning a blind eye to the Palestinians, turning a blind eye to the Yemenis, and by the way, they are supplying Saudi with weapons to kill Yemenis as well. That's also another genocide going on, and people have had enough. People have had enough of US. And even MBS from Saudi Arabia, he's had enough of Biden. Him and Biden do not get along. Ever since Biden said that MBS killed that journalist, and there is proof. And since then, there's no relationship between US or MBS. And if US wants to deal with Saudi Arabia, they go beyond MBS and go straight to his father, who's very, very terminally ill and probably not going to last the next few years. And once MBS starts selling oil and gas outside US dollars, you can say that's the end of the US hegemony, because the US dollar is not going to be the reserve currency anymore once Saudi Arabia moves away from US dollar. And ASEAN is now moving away from US dollar, as you can see. The process has already started. The whole world is shocked and mortified by the way they've treated Russia. Because if any country can be banned from the SWIFT system, first it was Iran, then it was Venezuela, now Russia. All of these countries are going to be thinking, hang on a second, we could be next. So I can imagine all of these countries now fast-tracking them moving away from the US dollar. And the process has started now. The whole process has started. It might not take weeks, might not take months, but it could be a couple of years. But history will look back at the day when the US dollar crashes and falls and burns. They will look back to this day when they said, you know what? Today was the day that the collapse has started. The day they moved Russia away from the SWIFT system, the day they banned Russia from the SWIFT system, and the collapse was started from this day on. Because all of these countries, ASEAN, Asia, you got Central Asia, you got Russia, you got Africa, you got most of the Middle East, you got Europe, you've got South America. And the only countries that will trade with US with dollar are the Five Eyes. So you got countries like Canada, UK, you got obviously Japan, South Korea, you've got Australia, basically the Five Eyes. Even India's moving away from using the dollar and starting to use its own currency. So the dollar, it's on its last legs. It's not going to last. I see a couple of years when the dollar is going to completely crash. So what do you think that will happen when the dollar crashes then? What do you think is going to be the impact? The impact's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. What this is not going to be able to do is to print any more dollars. Because it's not the reserve currency anymore, it cannot get away with printing dollars anymore. US dollar is going to be absolutely worthless. Toilet paper will be more expensive than the US dollar. The paper it's written on is going to be absolutely worthless. US bonds, US treasuries, all going to be useless. America's not going to be able to pay its debt. It's got over 30 trillion. So when it doesn't pay its debt, it's going to be in default. It's not going to be able to buy cheap goods from China and the rest of the world because it's going to be bankrupt. And the cost of inflation is going to shoot. America's going to have hyperinflation. And people are not going to be able to pay their food, pay for their gas. And you will see riots in the streets. You will see civil wars. You're going to see the Republicans fighting with the Democrats. You will see chaos all over America. And America could split because of the Civil War. America could split into smaller pieces. That's a worst case scenario, but it could happen. And it all comes down to this day, the day when they decided to take the matter into their own hands. They didn't even discuss it with the Federal Reserve. They didn't even discuss it with the banks. The politicians did this. The politicians did it without discussing it with anyone, making decisions based on their emotions and not looking at what impact this is going to cause, what impact is going to cause the American people. They didn't think of anything about that. They just think, oh, let's just try and destroy Russia as much as they can. But it's not destroying Russia, and I'll explain why. It's not destroying Russia. It's destroying the rest of the world. It's destroying the American economy, and it's destroying the European economy. Take a look at these clips I'm going to be showing you now.
Because more penalties against the central bank could come this weekend. According to the U.S. officials, Russia has about $640 billion in reserves. Understand that these are foreign currency reserves. A lot of people are suggesting that Russia has a lot of U.S. treasuries, and they don't. They sold most of them in 2018, as you can see here, and are down to somewhere perhaps near zero or to $5 billion worth of treasuries. And as you kind of see by that chart, they were planning ahead for some sort of event like this, and they're sitting on a massive amount of foreign currency reserves to the tune of about $500 billion. Because we're now going to look at the Credit Suisse report from Zoltan Pozsar over the weekend, which is very unusual. He almost never publishes this global money dispatch over the weekend, and he says exclusions from SWIFT will lead to missed payments and giant overdrafts, suggesting that we could see another insolvency event like Lehman Brothers, and similar to the missed payments and giant overdrafts that we saw in March 2020. He goes on to say that war has led to exclusions from SWIFT that will lead to missed payments again, but by design and not without a risk of retaliation. If a freeze in activity can lead to missed payments, an inability to receive payments through SWIFT can freeze the flow of goods, services, and commodities like gas, neon, and kind. So you think of it from a trade perspective. If I'm conducting trade with you and you have something I've ordered and I need to pay you, but I can't because my bank is frozen from the system, well, now we have an even bigger problem, putting pressure on inflation going up and the supply chain. And you can see that the ramifications for this get real big real fast.
So you see, guys, they did not think this through with the SWIFT. Blocking Russia from the SWIFT, these financial systems are just shooting themselves in the foot. And a lot of people don't realize this. Not just Russia sells oil and gas to the rest of the world. It sells a lot of other important things as well, like neon. It sells a lot of raw materials for semiconductors, for EV cars. And a lot of these suppliers in America and the West suddenly cannot get shipment for these goods anymore because they've been cut off. Russia's been cut off from the SWIFT. So you see supply chains is going to be affected. You see inflation is going to start shooting up because cost of these goods are going to be coming. They're going to start shooting up because these companies will have to find these goods from elsewhere, if there are any elsewhere. So it's going to cause huge amounts of supply chain issues, and it's going to drive up inflation even more. They have not thought about this at all. They have not thought about it at all. And this is just going to destroy the American economy and the European economy. And the only people that's going to be laughing are China and as well as Russia. So you see this article today, US, EU and UK are going to be targeting Russian oil and gas sector, and looks like they're going to be placing sanctions on Russia on the oil and gas areas. But what these Europeans and Americans, or shall I just say the West for now, what they don't realize is Russia has other options. They don't need to sell gas and oil to Europe. They don't need to sell it to Americans. Russia has other options. I mean, look at this. Russia, which plans to invest $55 billion in exploration of pipelines, aims to build a second gas pipeline, Power of Siberia 2, with the capacity of 50 BCM a year to run via Mongolia. The pipeline could be plugged into Russia's network system, which is exporting gas to Europe, which would put Europe and China in competition with each other. Again, you can see, critically, this pipeline would connect the same producing fields as those currently serve the European gas market. This would significantly increase Moscow's bargaining position, as it would be able to agree contracts with buyers in either Europe or in China, depending on who offers the higher price. Or, can I say, or, whichever country has not placed sanctions upon Russia. So you can see, all of these gas pipes that Russia is building, it doesn't need Europe anymore. It can divert all of the gas or some of its gas to China if China needs it. And looks like with these sanctions, they're going to put all of these gas fields into China. As for India, India has two options. Russia is currently building a pipeline that's going to go from Iran and they're going to build a gas pipeline straight to India. And there's also another pipeline coming straight from Russia as well. Russia have agreed to explore building the world's most expensive pipeline, costing close to $25 billion to ferry natural gas from Siberia to the world's third biggest energy consuming nation, which is India. The pipeline is to connect Russian gas grid to India through 4,500 kilometers to 6,000 kilometers pipeline, officials have said. Let's look at this article, shall we? So, look what the EU has said. EU has said in the short term, gas should be sourced from the US and Africa. Can you believe this shit? I mean, Europe wants to ferry gas from the US, and you cannot get pipelines from the US into Europe. Basically, you have to buy what's called liquefied natural gas, which means natural gas is liquefied, and in order to liquefy it, you need to take it through a factory and liquefy it, which is a very expensive process. Then you got to transport it all the way to Europe, and then you got to put it back into these factories again, and then you have to unliquefy it back to its natural gas state. And all of that takes energy, all of that is expensive, and the costs are between 2 to 3 times more expensive than you would get it from a pipeline, natural gas. So you see, it's not a viable option, and this means European companies will have to bear the brunt of the cost. European people will have to bear the brunt of the cost. Gas prices and electricity prices are going to shoot through the roof. People will have to pay 2 times, even 3 times, even 4 times what they're paying last year. And, you know, European companies are going to be less and less competitive compared to Chinese companies. For example, they're going to have to sell their goods at a much higher price, more expensive price than a Chinese company, for example. And people around the world are going to carry on buying Chinese goods because they're much, much cheaper. And you see European manufacturers are going to go down the pan. And they're not going to be competitive. A lot of companies will go out of business. And this is the end of Europe as we speak of it. And then you have the German Chancellor, who's a complete puppet. He's the worst German Chancellor I've ever seen in my whole life. He is a complete puppet to the US. Whatever he says means nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's the worst puppet I've ever seen, compared to Boris, compared to Morrison. And then you got Trudeau, and you got to put Scholz right at the top. He seems to be the leader of the puppets. I swear to God, this guy's destroying the German economy, and he's only done it in a few months. He's only been in power for a short time, and he's single-handedly destroyed Germany's economy. All the good work that's been done in the past, he's destroying the economy, destroying Europe in the meantime as well, and whatever he says has no value. You know, he said he's not going to sanction Russia with SWIFT. And what happens? Russia gets sanctioned with SWIFT. He said he's not going to sanction the oil and the gas industry. It's going to affect Germans. And what happens? The oil and gas industry gets sanctioned. This guy has no say whatsoever. He is the worst puppet I've ever seen. And I feel sorry for the German people. And I feel sorry for the Europeans. Because Europeans are going to suffer for this. So Russia has already said that the oil prices could reach $300 US dollars per barrel, and this is ridiculous prices, absolutely ridiculous prices. And the only people that are going to be winning is Russia, because they'll be selling oil at these prices, and Russia's economy is going to shoot up. They're going to be laughing because their main export is oil and gas. So Russia's going to be laughing. They're not going to be affected. The people that are going to be affected are Europeans, and US dollar is going to be affected. And you can see escalating Moscow-Western tension speeds up Russia's energy pivot to China. So as you know, as I've told you before, all of Russia's energy, they're going to pivot it all to China and also to India as well. They're fast-tracking de-dollarization. Not only is it happening in Russia, it's happening in the rest of the world as well. China is looking at all of this in shock because they know they could be next. Any conflict that happens around the Taiwan Strait area, they know the whole world's going to do the same thing to China. So China's looking at this in shock, and they're going to be accelerating their de-dollarization as well. The ASeAN has said they're already going to be doing that. India's already been doing that. Most of Middle East is going to be doing that. MBS doesn't like Biden, so he'll probably be doing that. Central Asia is already doing that because Central Asia is a pivotal part of BRI, and trade goes between Russia and China and into Europe. So Central Asia is going to be doing that as well. Africa is going to be doing that because Africa has got a lot of Chinese firms, Chinese investments. So Africa's going to be doing that. So you see, there's not many countries left that are going to be using the US dollar. US dollar is going to shoot down over the next few years, and you will see, started from this day, and they will look back at this day and say, you know what, it started from today, and look at where the dollar is now. So give it a year, give it 2 years, and then you'll see. White House talks to Venezuela in a scramble to replace Russian oil. So can you imagine all of these diplomats rushing into Venezuela saying, "Oh, Maduro, my friend, how you doing today? How you doing? Long time no see. Oh, by the way, do you mind, giving us a bit of your oil? Come on, we've been friends for ages. Come on." Can you imagine all of these American gangsters going into Venezuela? And do you really think aliens are gonna, welcome them in open arms and put roses on their feet? Hell no. Venezuela is gonna pretty much say, you know what, get rid of all of our sanctions, then we'll talk. And is America prepared to get rid of all of Venezuela's sanctions? I don't think so. Then you have the JCPOA as well with Iran, and they're very, very close to a deal there. And whatever deal is struck, is basically a win for Iran because they held their ground, and I do not see Iran backing down from any of US's demands, and US has got no choice but to take up all of Iran's demands. And even if they agree on this JCPOA deal, all of these deals has already been struck between China and Russia. So Russia's got pipelines going from Iran to India that's been taking place at the moment, and they've signed all of the deals with Iranian companies. China's already signed all of the deals with Iranian companies. So China's going to be winning, Russia's going to be winning because Iran doesn't have any more sanctions. So a lot of Western companies are going to go into Iran, build their oil fields, build their gas fields, but that's going to take years. It's going to take years, at least 2, 3, 4 years. It doesn't happen overnight. So that's going to be happening. And you don't know what's going to happen when Trump comes into power. Trump comes into power a couple of years later, and he'll probably pull out again or do the same thing again. So you see, they know America's unstable. So Iranians are not going to, stab their friends in the back like Russia or China and go with the Americans. They will say to the Americans, the first priority are the Russians, first priority are also the Chinese as well, and you can basically pick up whatever scraps are left. This is getting worse and worse for European companies and American companies. So you see, Russia proposing nationalizing a lot of foreign owned factories that shut operations. So a lot of these Western companies who have shut complete operations in Russia because of the Ukraine stuff that's going on, and all of these CEOs that spent years investing in Russia, they got a lot of assets in Russia, they pretty much walked away, and Russia is happily taking these assets and they're going to nationalize them. So nobody's going to be losing any jobs. Russia's going to be carrying with these operations, carry on making money, while these ridiculous and stupid European companies who have run off left everything behind for Russia to carry on with it. Because Russia's not losing out. It's all of these ridiculous, stupid companies who have actually invested in Russia, who have actually got assets in Russia, and they're pretty much walking away from all of it. So they're the ones that are going to be losing out, not Russia. And again, Russia's going to make plenty of money through oil and gas, and their economy is not going to be affected by this at all. You have to respect some American companies and some Western companies who are resisting the pressure of boycotting Russia. At least they have some, business sense and maybe some common sense screwed onto their heads. So you got to respect them for that. People like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. However, I gotta tell you, I actually recorded this video, and within half an hour, the news just came in that McDonald's leads fresh exodus of brands from Russia. So you can see Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Starbucks, Unilever, Yum Brands pull back after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So within half an hour of making this video, this news came out, and I was uploading this video on YouTube, and I had to cancel it and redo this video, well, especially this part, because everything I've said about respecting McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Starbucks it's all gone out the window. I gotta say, democracy is BS. BS, capital B, capital S. You know, you can't speak the truth anymore. If you're a journalist, you speak the truth, you get put in jail, like Assange. You can't be a broadcaster sending out independent news. You can't have your own opinion when it comes to the news. Look at the RT channel, how they literally destroyed the RT channel in one day. Literally one day it took them to destroy that channel. You can't protest. Look at the truckers, or in Canada, in America. Look what's happening to them. Freedom of speech, democracy, freedom of expression. Freedom is just BS. Capital B, capital S. And nowadays, as a company, if you're an American company or a Western company, you don't have any freedom to do whatever the hell you want. If the government tells you to pull out, like they've done to McDonald's, they've got no choice but to pull out. And I'm sure the government has stepped in. A couple of men in black suits walked into McDonald's CEO's office and say, look, if you don't pull out of Russia, or else. And guess what? Within an hour, they pulled out. So did Pepsi, so did Starbucks. And whenever these government people in black suits walk into the CEO's office, they mean business. And that's what's happened. There is no democracy in the world. There is no truth in the world. There is no justice. It's basically the government controlling the masses, brainwashing people like sheep. And that's the kind of world we live in. Democracy is just fake. It's all BS. And people that speak against it and stand against it are few and far between. And the companies who have moved out of Russia, they're the ones that are going to be losing out. Because anyone that knows business, it's the business itself that loses out. You're the one that's actually putting your time in, your investment in, your money in. You're the one that buys the land, builds the factories, hires the people. So the hard work is done, and then you walk away, and Russia's got the easy job. They just nationalize it. The workers carry on working, making money. They nationalize it. The Russian companies are winning because they get a brand new business for free. They can carry on running it. They can do whatever they want with it. And Russia has nothing else to lose anymore. Russia's been literally hit with the maximum amount of sanctions. Russia can do whatever the hell it wants. In fact, Russia can take over these McDonald's branches, carry on trading as McDonald's. They don't have to pay any license fees to the real McDonald's. They don't have to pay any franchise fees. They can carry on running these restaurants as McDonald's. Russia has got full maximum amount of sanctions. What's McDonald's going to do? Sue them? No, they can't. They can't do anything. Russia will nationalize these restaurants and carry on running as normal. They don't have to pay crap to McDonald's. They don't have to pay crap to the American government. They can do whatever the hell they want. I have been to Iran, guys, and I have been to Tehran. I've walked around. In Tehran, they got McDonald's everywhere. They got Burger King everywhere. They got Starbucks. They got Nando's. Every single Western restaurant, every single Western branch you have in London, they got it in Iran. Do you really think these companies are trading in Iran? Of course not. They're all sanctioned. So these Iranians are opening up McDonald's and Burger King and any Western branches and trading as McDonald's. So what's McDonald's going to do? Go to Iran and sue them? They can't. They can't do anything. So that's what Iran is doing, and that's what Russia will do and can do. West can't do anything. And he doesn't need to worry about IP theft or whatever. Russia can build its own semiconductors, they can have their own Windows servers, they can have their own Oracle servers, they can have their own, networks, they can copy whatever the Westerners are doing, they can have pirated software. They don't care, they don't have to worry about IP or anything anymore. They're completely cut off from the West. They can do whatever they want. They can have their own version of Microsoft in a Russian version for free. They don't have to pay any licenses, they can do whatever they want. I mean, I've got a lot of friends in Tehran. I visited one of my good friends. He works in the government, and I went to see him in the office in the embassy. He works in the embassy, and he had a laptop with him, and it's a work laptop. He also had a work phone with him, and guess what? It was an Apple iPhone. Then I looked at his laptop, and I noticed something, and he had Windows in it. So I asked him, hang on a second, why have you got a Windows laptop? I thought Windows was banned in Iran. I thought it was all boycotted and it's in the blacklist. And he told me it's basically pirated software. And all the companies in Iran are using pirated software to run their business. They all get it from torrent sites. And basically they don't have to pay any license fees. They don't have to pay any licenses to any American companies. They can do whatever the hell they want. And a lot of these Iranian businesses they steal the source code, they make their own source code, and they change a few things here and there, and that's it. They don't need to pay any license fees. Nobody's suing them. And not many people realize this, but Iran has got its own industry. Iran has got no help from the West whatsoever. And Iran has managed to overcome maximum sanctions and survive by itself. And this is the only way it survived. It's used a lot of American software and hacked a lot of American software and learned to dissect them and build its own. And that's how Iran's industry has developed. And people underestimate how good Iran has survived with all of these sanctions. And if you go to Iran, they got everything there. They got everything that you need. Everything is functioning as normal. And obviously it's not as normal as a Western developed country. But what can you do? When you have maximum sanctions against your country, there's not many options. So you got to do what you can do to survive. And Iran has done really well. And this is what Iran has done. And this is exactly what Russia will do, but in a bigger scale, much bigger scale. And the big losers are going to be the American companies and America itself. But China's got its own software. China has been hit with sanctions for years. People think, China's not been hit with any sanctions. They've had a military embargo. No country was allowed to sell any military hardware to China. So China built their own. Even NASA was not allowed to use China in the International Space Station. And China was banned from the International Space Station. So China built its own. So you see, you cannot ban a country. Eventually, that country will have its own system. And China's built its own. Russia's going to do the same. And there'll be a completely different system from the West. You have the system which is Eastern, Chinese or Russian, and you have a system that's Western, and they're going to be completely cut off from each other. You have more and more systems moving away from the SWIFT. You will have more countries moving away from the SWIFT because they know using SWIFT is very, very dangerous. You work with SWIFT and America doesn't like you anymore, they can cut you off from SWIFT any moment. So you as a country, you have your national interest. You need to safeguard your people, you need to safeguard your businesses and your systems. And only way to do that is move away from SWIFT. And you'll see a lot of countries moving away from SWIFT, start using the Chinese system. And this is going to be the end of the dollar, starting today. I also want to talk about this article here. China exports up 16.3% as trade with Russia surged. So China's exports have gone up. It's going to keep going up because they have a brand new market of Russia, and Russia's only going to be buying stuff from China because they can't buy from anywhere else. And the most important thing is this line here. exports to Russia rose 41% compared to the same period the previous year. So this is only in January, February. So imagine what the rest of the year is going to be like. There's going to be huge amounts of imports going into Russia, huge amounts of exports coming out of Russia. That percentage is going to go 200%, 300% over the next year or so. And don't forget, Russia and China share a huge border. So I can imagine China and Russia building more links, building more train lines to integrate each other with each other's systems. There's already 3 or 4 massive train lines that go from China to Russia. There's going to be much more. There's going to be more infrastructure linking Russia and China, and that's going to accelerate over the next few years. The financial systems are going to be interlocked with each other, and you will see a lot more trade going on between Russia and China. And the Biden administration have placed tariffs and sanctions on Chinese companies and Chinese goods. So for China to import stuff from America, it's very expensive. And why should they do that when they can get it from Russia for a much cheaper price? China will love to buy stuff from Russia instead, because China buys a whole lot of agricultural goods from America. So if China can diversify all of its agriculture to buy from Russia instead, and Russia has been working on its agriculture for the last couple of years, and a lot more people are starting to grow wheat, a lot more people are starting to grow soybeans, because those are the main imports that China buys from America, and those are the main imports that America's actually targeted for their tariffs. So China would much rather buy it cheaply from Russia. Not only can they buy it more cheaper from Russia, the transport costs are going to be cheaper as well, because they're going to be going through train, and rather than shipping, thousands and thousands of miles all over America to China, you can get it from trains, and it's going to be maybe half a day or even a day maximum with the trains coming from all over Russia into China, and that's going to improve over the next few years, and you will see huge amounts of integration between Russia and China, and that's just going to accelerate because of the Western actions. So what's the summary? As a summary, this is the beginning of the end of the US dollar. The US hegemony is going to end over the next few years. The dollar is not going to be the reserve currency, and that's going to slowly die down over the next couple of years. The world is shocked with America and the West's treatment of Russia and the way they kicked Russia out of SWIFT, and any country knows that they could be next any point if America decided they do not like you anymore. So countries are going to move away from the dollar, and the process is already taking place, and it's already been accelerated all over the world. The impact of taking SWIFT away from Russia is going to be huge. It's going to hit a lot of Western banks and Western financial institutions. A lot of media is not going to report on this, but I've already showed you from the clips that this is going to be a huge impact, a financial loss in the West, not just to Russia, but also to the West as well. And the West has underestimated the sanctions on Russia, and it will hit them very hard. And also, the West is also starting to talk about placing sanctions on oil and gas, Russia's main import and export. And that's going to also have huge impact on the global oil prices. And in the end, Russians are going to be laughing, because if prices of oil increase, it's just going to make more money for Russia. And all of these sanctions, it really does not matter, because end of the day, Russia's going to be making more money. And they're going to be diversifying all of their trade links to China more, integrating their systems with China more. And in the long term, Russia's going to be even more better financially. It's not going to be dependent on the West. It's not going to be linked to the West. And all of these sanctions, after a year or so, is going to be meaningless. And Russia will win, because Russia will be controlling Ukraine. It would have set all of its goals and achieved all of its goals. And don't forget, losing Ukraine, the West is going to be losing Ukraine as well. So imagine all the money that the West is going to be losing, because America and Europe has been giving loans and other stuff, weapons and stuff to Ukraine over the years. So we're talking about billions and billions of write-offs, because it's all going to be owned by Russia. So it's not just that loss you got to think about. You also got to think about the losses that's coming out of Ukraine. Ukraine was also a big wheat supplier to the Europeans as well. So that's going to go. It's mainly going to be Russia now, or controlled by Russia. So a lot of people, a lot of media is not talking about that, the losses that the Europeans and the Americans are going to be getting by losing Ukraine to Russia, and all of the gains that Russia is going to be getting by gaining Ukraine. And so a lot of people in the West, a lot of media and a lot of politicians like to paint the picture. Oh, Russia's losing out. We're hitting Russia where it hurts. We're sanctioning Russia, maximum amount of sanctions. Russia's rubles dying. The Russian people are dying. They're going to stand up and they're going to kick out Putin. The whole Russian's economy going to die. No, it's not going to die. It's not going to collapse. Seriously, these people do not know what they're talking about. Do not listen to the Western media. You know, it's a lot of crap. There's so much lies and ridiculous stuff going out. And, you know, these journalists have no clue. They don't know anything about economics. They're just posting out gibberish and garbage. Do not get fooled. Do not get, do not be brainwashed by these idiots. You are better than that. Do your own research. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.